You scroll past a contact you still haven't deleted. They've been gone 2 years. Your thumb hovers over the trash icon, then you close the app instead. That tiny hesitation is older than language itself. 90,000 years ago, in a cave in northern Iraq, someone felt that same hesitation and acted on it in a way that still divides scientists today. They didn't just leave the body where it fell. They covered it in flowers. Yarrow, cornflower, hollyhock, pollen grains preserved in the soil for archaeologists to find tens of thousands of years later. Why would a species fighting to survive an ice age spend precious energy on flowers for someone who could no longer smell them? That single question split researchers into two camps. One side said it proved early humans grieved exactly the way you do. The other said the pollen blew in by accident, dragged in by burrowing rodents. The argument has run for over 60 years, and it still isn't fully settled. But newer evidence is tipping the scales, and it isn't pointing where anyone expected, because the flowers might not even be the strangest part of what your ancestors did with their dead. That cave is called Shanidar. The man who first excavated it was archaeologist Ralph Seletsky. In the 1960s, he uncovered a Neanderthal skeleton surrounded by clustered pollen from multiple flowering plants, all blooming at different times of year, which made an accidental scattering seem unlikely to him. He called it the flower burial, and the name stuck for decades. Skeptics pushed back hard. Could a single bee or a single gust of wind really explain that pattern? Recent excavations at the same site have found more bodies arranged in similar clusters, hinting that this wasn't one grieving individual, but a recurring behavior. A behavior shared by a species you were taught to picture as little more than a brute. Go back further, past Neanderthals entirely, and the picture gets stranger still. In a cave system in Spain called Sima de los Huesos, the Pit of Bones, paleoanthropologist Juan Luis Arzuaga and his team found the remains of at least 28 individuals at the bottom of a 50-foot vertical shaft. These bodies didn't fall there by accident. Something or someone deliberately placed them at the bottom of that pit, over and over across generations. This happened around 430,000 years ago, long before Homo sapiens existed anywhere on Earth. So ask yourself, what does it mean that the impulse to do something with the dead predates your own species? Here's the twist almost nobody expects. Archaeologist Paul Pettit has spent decades studying the deepest origins of human burial, and his research suggests the earliest motive likely wasn't reverence at all. It may have started as something closer to pest control. A body left exposed draws scavengers. Scavengers draw danger and disease straight back into the group's living space. Burying a body or dropping it down a shaft kept the camp safer, cleaner, easier to defend. The ritual, the flowers, the careful positioning of limbs, those likely came later, layered on top of a behavior that began as pure survival logic. Think about that for a moment. The instinct you feel at a funeral, the lump in your throat, the urge to say something meaningful, might be built on a foundation that started as nothing more than keeping hyenas away from camp. Practical first, emotional second, but emotional all the same once it took root. So when did the shift happen? Pettit's work points to a slow blending, not a single moment. Early hominins disposed of bodies for safety. Later populations began doing it the same way, in the same places again and again, until repetition itself created meaning. You do something similar every time you visit a grave on the same date each year, even if you can't fully explain why that date still pulls at you. But here's what should unsettle you. Even after the practical reason existed, your ancestors kept adding meaning on top of it. They didn't have to scatter flowers. They didn't have to curl bodies into a sleeping position, knees tucked to chest, as if death were just a deeper rest. Pure hygiene doesn't explain that. Something else was already happening in the Paleolithic mind, something that looks a great deal like grief, dressed up in behavior long before anyone had the words to describe it. Which brings you back to that contact in your phone. You're not sentimental for refusing to delete it. You're running software that's at least 90,000 years old, maybe as old as that pit in Spain. The flowers, the careful posture, the refusal to simply walk away. None of that started with you. And none of it started with funerals, either. It started in the dark, in a cave, long before anyone could explain why it mattered. 2 years later, you still haven't deleted that contact. Neither could they 60,000 years before you were born.